Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. We have here three speakers from the zoo world. We have Jamie Christon, who is the COO at Chester Zoo in the UK. We have Elaine Bensted, who is the Chief Executive of Zoo South Australia. And we have Martin Zordan from the CEO of WAZA, which I think is in Switzerland, yeah?
In Barcelona.
Oh, in Barcelona. Good stuff. Cool. So, yeah, I thought we'd start off this discussion by looking at, it's a grim subject, but just talking about the reality of COVID and what impact it's had on your respective institutions over the last 6 months.
Yeah, sure. And being based in Australia, Australia probably started seeing the impacts of COVID a little bit later than some parts of the world, certainly from Europe. You know, I look back, our daughter lives in London, and I went over for her 30th birthday for 2 weeks at the end of February and the beginning of March, and literally flew back into Australia just as it was all really getting crazy, and managed to get back a couple of days before our borders closed. So certainly from a zoo, we're not a government zoo, we are private, and so our revenue comes from our visitors and our members and our events. And so we started seeing a reduction in revenue, I guess, from early March as things started changing, and we were still open, but our visitor numbers were definitely going down, and then we couldn't do our behind the scenes and experiences and events that we get a lot of revenue from. And then we closed on the 25th of March, both our sites. So we run Adelaide Zoo, a city zoo, and Monarto Safari Park, which is about 70 kilometres out of Adelaide. There's a large safari park. Closed both of them the 25th of March, and got to say it was a really, really tough day, as I know many businesses were facing. We've been open to the public since 1883, and wow. In that whole time, there's been one day that we weren't open to the public. So to announce that we were closing until further notice, we had no idea how long that would be for, was really, really tough. We had to stand down a lot of our staff on no pay, which was not a fun couple of days, as many people faced. And we couldn't even let some of those staff who had a lot of annual leave and long service leave, but they got stood down, they weren't allowed to access their leave entitlements because we really just had to preserve cash so that we could continue our animal care, and for us that was really, really vital. We reopened both sites at the end of June, so we were closed for 3 months, and we're open, been really well supported by visitors since we've reopened, which is fabulous, but we are still on pretty severe restrictions. It's about 40% of our capacity is our number cap, and that's so that we can comply with all the social distancing, and can't do events and a whole range of different things. So we're open. The public's been incredibly supportive since we've been open. We've been sold out on a lot of days, which is fabulous. But of course that's sold out in our July and August, which down under, that's our winter. We're now coming into the nice weather as numbers should be really increasing, and we'll still be operating on those reduced numbers. So, but as I said, we have been, I guess, lucky in many ways that the government, both the South Australian government and also the Australian government, we have had some support. You know, down 40% of staff on no pay, which was horrible, but within about 2 weeks of that, about a week and a half of that, there was what's called JobKeeper, that was some funding support to offset salaries, so we were able to provide some salary payment to those staff. We also got some animal feed, animal care support funding. So through the Zoo and Aquarium Association in our region and the relationship with government, we've been able to make sure at least that the animal care is absolutely not in doubt. And that's been a fabulous thing. Not everyone has had that around the world, so we are positive. But it's been challenging. You certainly have to be flexible, you've got to be innovative. We're now trying to look at how we run our budget in a way while we're on these reduced numbers. How can we still get as close to business as usual revenue as possible? And that just means doing a lot of new things, different things, and then trimming our costs accordingly.
Right. Okay. So it's good that you've had support from the government, and I think the position in the UK is a little bit less consistent, let's say, Jamie. So tell us a bit more about Chester Zoo over the last 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, well, mainly the story is quite similar to Elaine in terms of when we closed. We closed our doors on the 21st of March this year, and that was on the back, I think, of dwindling visit numbers for about a week and a half before that. Prime Minister announced his stay-at-home slogan, and then I think the Saturday before lockdown here in the UK, we just realised that we couldn't operate any longer, so we closed the gates. But we had some quite constructive talks with DEFRA, the Department for Environment and Farming Rural Affairs, early on, I think, around when we could possibly reopen. But as restrictions lifted in the UK beginning of June, the government realised that this could mean that people could flock back to zoos and then put an indefinite closure, something called a statutory instrument on us, which meant that we weren't able to open, and announced that we had to stay closed indefinitely, which is a little bit odd on the back of the fact that non-essential retail and pubs and restaurants had been given dates when they could reopen, but outdoor zoos couldn't. So we launched something called Save Our Zoo here in Chester, and just blown away by the amount of support that we got from people here in Chester. We raised over £4 million for Chester in a matter of a couple of weeks. Media response was amazing. I think I counted in 55 media interviews in a week on all sorts of programs here in the UK, on Good Morning America, on right around the world, which was just unbelievable. And I think that and the political pressure that we managed to exert on government, we had a parliamentary question, we had a debate in Parliament based on zoos being closed, really pushed the government into forcing themselves to allow us to reopen. So we reopened on, again, similar time to Elaine, on the 15th of June on restricted numbers, not restricted by government, but restricted by us feeling through risk assessments that we'd done that it was safe to open on those particular numbers. So we've been operating on about 50% capacity during the summer, our summer here in the UK, which is coming to an end now. So we've had three months of closure and 2 months of half capacity, which has led to us having a financial scar of around about £5.5 million on our books. And then to compound that, the government announced a £100 million government fund for zoos and aquariums in the UK after an initial £14 million fund based around animal welfare, but the criteria that has been set by government is so stringent that no UK zoos have actually been able to meet that eligibility. Right. You have to have only 12 weeks of cash left in your bank to be able to even apply for the fund. And as a charity, it would be dereliction of our duty if I let the charity get into such a state. And it's also minus any other funding that you may have had from government, so any loans, any furlough scheme, anything like that. So it's pretty difficult to get it. And this fund runs out. I think the last available date to apply is later on in November. And so it's unlikely that any zoos are going to actually get any of it, and it's just going to disappear. So that's been pretty disappointing from government. But we're open, and we are now planning what the new normal looks like, what the new world is. I think I've managed to persuade our trustees and our staff here that we're never going to go back to where we were post pre-March. There is going to be a new normal, and see what the next few months happen. And we have a busy winter period as well, and we're hoping that we can stay open during the winter and into next year.
Good stuff. And I think it's fair to say, Jamie, Chester's one of the biggest zoos in Europe. You're in a better position than a lot of the very small zoos. So, Martin, perhaps you could pick up on the challenges faced in particular by small zoos and aquariums.
Sorry, I misheard you.
So I was saying, if you could perhaps expand upon the challenges faced by COVID for the smaller zoos and aquariums.
Yeah. So in our case, what we saw started probably in January. We had a few zoos in Southeast Asia that were closed. And then suddenly in March, we saw
Martin,
So sorry.
Yeah.
Now you can hear me? Yes.
We can hear you now, fine. Sorry about that.
Yes, in our case, what we saw was a number of members closing probably in January, and then starting March, we saw this affecting many other countries. And within WAZA, we have a diversity of private zoos, government zoos, different kind of models. And some of those are small zoos. It's difficult to answer to that question with a general answer because every case is so different, basically based on the support they get from the government. But what we have seen is that sometimes small zoos don't struggle necessarily as much as bigger zoos because they manage to get support from local communities, or what the government is offering is helpful enough, while some of the bigger zoos are in a much bigger challenge in that sense. So it's difficult to say a general answer for smaller zoos. Yeah.
And I know you've talked about the importance of being visible in the community and working with the community. I think what Jamie mentioned about the support coming from Chester is key. So Elaine, how has the local community reacted in terms of supporting your zoos?
Yeah, look, as I said, when we closed, we had a lot of media, and our membership base was incredibly supportive. Since we reopened, we reopened in the middle of winter in Adelaide, and yet we were pretty much selling out every day based on our number caps, and that was just the support of the community. So we've had amazing support from our regular visitors, our annual membership, which is a really strong component, and also most of our corporate partners. So we've got about 63 corporate partners who provide a sponsorship arrangement, some in cash, but a lot of it is in-kind support, whether it be food or a range of different products. And some of those have been doing it really tough as well, but the vast majority have stuck with us and not tried to seek any extension of their agreement. Just, we're all in this together. How do we work out? How do we maximise the support? But I've got to say, my team here have also been really innovative about how do you do that engagement? Because one of our key focus things is, we've got about 600,000 visitors a year normally, and they're our biggest advocates. When they can't come and visit, how do you keep them engaged? And so, as with many zoos around the world, stepping up all of the online engagement, doing keeper talks through technology rather than live. I think just last week we started doing some behind the scenes, so you can have a giraffe during a team Zoom meeting, and the corporates will pay for that sort of experience, but it's all about connection. And we've been really well supported by the local South Australian community. And for us, it was also on the back of really incredibly bad bushfires, which we're now seeing in the United States. And my heart goes out to the US because it's obviously got enormous impacts on people and on wildlife. And that's where Australia was. December, January, February were just, Australia was facing horrendous bushfires. And we've sort of just got, from a zoo community, got to the end of the immediate veterinary response, and we were moving more into the longer term conservation response, and then COVID hit. So I think we'd built up a lot of that really strong social capital with the South Australian community, and in fact with the global community, about the work we were doing with bushfires. So we had to continue that, but just using different methods. A lot more online.
And what have you? I know it's early days, but and COVID is dreadful in a huge number of ways. But Have any of you found any positives coming out of it so far? But perhaps, so for example, COVID has been an accelerator in terms of the adoption of new technology. So what thoughts do you have about that? Jamie, if you perhaps...
I mean, certainly we had to, sorry, Jamie, you go.
Technology drive's definitely been one. A bit like Elaine, we did virtual tours of the zoo every Friday, or most Fridays during lockdown, through Facebook and YouTube. And I think we're up to a couple of million people watching them. And it was just a very, very simple couple of members from our PR team, an iPhone on a stick, talking to different keepers as they're going around the zoo. I think trying to make people aware that even though we closed our gates to the public, there were still 200 people working here. There's still 35,000 animals. We're still a charity. We still need support, and we're still here, still doing exactly the same stuff, still making an impact on conservation, and letting people see what we were actually doing. There was births, there was new arrivals, there was deaths. All the things that you normally see in a zoo. And we did it on the back of the Channel 4 series here, Secret Life of the Zoo, which I think is now running in its 8th or 9th series, and used some of the celebrity keepers that we had, that people want to see and talk to, and that we used to dealing with the public and used to talking on a camera and could tell a really good story about what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. I think that really helped me and want to continue doing that. I think also in the new world, looking at how can we develop income streams through technology, how we can bring the zoo to people at home, because we know that Elaine, our tickets have been under great demand over the summer here. We've been at capacity, new capacity every single day, which means people can't get here. And some people don't want to come out to the zoo yet because they're still afraid of being out and about in public, or are still shielding. And then our education program as well. We normally would see 100,000 school kids here at the zoo every year. We're now being able to take the zoo out to them through technology, through YouTube, and through live online stuff. So for us to be able to create some sort of income through that has been really important. I think the other thing that we've also noticed is, as well, including myself, is before COVID, I used to hate doing on Zoom calls, and I thought the only online present thing you could do was through Skype. I didn't really know much about Zoom or MS Teams or all that sort of stuff. And I used to go traveling down to London for a day for a 2-hour meeting, which was just the norm because that's what you did. Now it's so much more efficient, less cost, less travel. We're doing great things for the environment now by not getting in our cars or getting on a train or traveling around the world, and we can do it just as well as we were doing it before. So, although I realise people getting together, is great, and I don't want to stop doing that, but being much more efficient, fit and agile than probably used to be. There's always some opportunities out of a crisis, and we've found a good few. Yeah.
So, Martin, how do you think the visitor experience will change for after?
I think that people is already in a need to connect with nature. It depends a little bit on the country, but for example, here in Spain, we are still in a lockdown phase, and people just still wants to go to those places where they can enjoy and be out there. So I think that's part of the experience people will still looking for. In terms of changes, all of the zoos, I would have to say, have implemented different measures based on what their local authorities are either recommending or making mandatory. And I think that will be new. I hope that many visitors will have some more insight into their education programs because of the contents they will see online. So I think that will be new. And to me, the opportunity here, which I might be over positive here, but the reason behind this crisis we are experiencing is in part because we didn't recognize our connection to nature. we didn't recognize that there are ecosystems with animals, and those ecosystems have diseases, and those are natural. But if we intervene in those and we take animals to wet markets, we are exposing ourselves. Also, if we are a species that travel long distance, there is no other species like humans that in hours can be on the other side of the planet. And there are implications for that. And I think as zoos and aquariums, we are able to share this message in different ways, in different cultures, but I think that is the opportunity we have here. And that is what we want to bring and share with our societies.
Fantastic. I thought we'd have a look at, you've mentioned before, Martin, you've used the phrase progressive zoos, by which you, I think, mean zoos are involved in conservation and have conservation as the lead in terms of the way they run the business. So, and certainly both Zoos SA and Chester are heavily involved in conservation, breeding, etc. So I thought, Elaine, if you could have just run through initially what conservation initiatives you guys are involved in. I know you're involved in with rock wallabies, for example, and parrots. So if you perhaps give us an overview of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and we are involved in a whole range of conservation projects, both locally, so with Australian animals, but also supporting a number of overseas conservation programs. So I guess our view is if we have a non-Australian animal in our zoo collection that our visitors are viewing, and they ask, why do we hold Sumatran tigers, for an example, we have to have a good reason for that. And that's also, it's education, it's connection, but it's also that we're doing something to help those animals in the wild. So you mentioned the orange-bellied parrot's one of my favourite little birds. It's a little tiny parrot, but it's a migratory parrot, so it moves from the southern parts of Australia to Tasmania every year for breeding. Estimated only to be about 50 left in the wild, so they are really critically endangered, and we've been involved in that program for a number of years in breeding and then release to the wild. Wallabies has probably been one of our longest lasting Australian conservation programs, a whole range of different wallaby species that we're involved with. The black flank that you mentioned, the waru as it's called in the Anangu, the local Aboriginal people, critically endangered mainly through the impact of feral animals, feral cats and foxes in Australia, really big issue. And it's a really lovely conservation program. We've been involved in it for many years, but it's got science. So we actually have been doing some cross-fostering so you can speed up the breeding. We do release into the Anangu Pitjantjatjara lands, the APY lands it's called, very middle of Australia, so right. Very remote. And we train up some of the local Aboriginal people as rangers. We use radio telemetry collars, so it's got a scientific element and got a really lovely community element. The local Aboriginal people have actually created a new Dreamtime song about the waru being taken from the lands to this mythical place called Minato, which of course is one of our zoos, and then really brought back to the lands. So it's one of those programs. It's got conservation, it's got community development, it's got science, and it is actually working in that we've got waru now back from the brink of extinction. So yeah, a whole range of local and international conservation programs, some of which get more challenging in a COVID world. You know, trying to with animals that, you know, a bird that might have a really short breeding cycle and you've got to move it across borders within South Australia when there's hard border closures. And you've got to try and seek government exemptions so that you can still move animals. So it's been a challenge, but I think as Martin said, it's actually raised the profile of the conservation work that we do, because I think we know we've been doing it for years and years, and we always try and communicate it, but we communicate it very specifically with our visitors and our members. I think during shutdown, the media and the general public got more interested in some of the specific zoo challenges that shutdown and lockdown meant, and therefore they started learning more about some of those conservation programs. So I think in the long term, it's repositioned us in the eyes of our community, which is a positive.
And what about the, you've got a really ambitious project on the York Peninsula. Can you just tell us how that's going on?
Yeah, the Yorke Peninsula, for those who aren't familiar with the geography of Australia or South Australia, if you look at a map of South Australia, you'll see there's a peninsula called Yorke Peninsula. It looks like the boot, it looks like Italy. Basically, it's the boot on the bottom of South Australia. And as I said, one of our biggest issues has been feral animals reproduction, so foxes and cats in particular. So this is a project, the Manu Bangara project, to literally put a fence across the boot, starting at the ankle, and we'll move up to the knee and eventually get to the thigh, but starting at the ankle, and fencing off the bottom part of a large piece of land with the aim of trying to reduce the impact of feral animals and then rewild the area. So our role in that is habitat restoration, but also breeding and release of animals. And it's a really, really nice project because it's got government engaged, because they understand that it's not just a conservation project, it's actually a really significant tourism project, because if you can rewild the area, it becomes a fabulous tourism area. But it's also a sound economic project, and we've got all the local farmers on board because they understand if you reintroduce some of the native animals, they're going to get better soil production, so their farm becomes more productive. So it's a true project that's got economic benefits, social benefits and environmental benefits. Long time coming, and it's a 20-year commitment from the government, which is, for us, probably the longest commitment we've ever had for funding for a conservation project. I'm sure many people know you get 1 or 2 years, and we're committed for the 20 years, but the government funding support often stops before that. So it's a really exciting project.
That's really cool. And Jamie, you over at Chester, you've had a newborn Western chimpanzee last week, so congratulations on that. But tell us more about Chester's work.
Yeah, as you say, we had a chimpanzee born about 2.5 weeks ago. Western chimpanzees found in West Africa, ranging from places like Senegal to Ghana. We were aware there's less than 18,000 Western chimpanzees remaining in Africa, and they are under huge threat from hunting, illegal bushmeat trade, and extensive habitat loss as a result of human activity. And they've declined extremely quickly and continue to do so. And at the moment, there's little or no prospect of that decline halting. We're aware that, especially during lockdown, especially during COVID, right around the world, instances of poaching have increased substantially in a number of countries, A, because there's been less food, B, because there's been less ability for authorities to manage poaching. As Elaine said, we have been really driving home our conservation message during that period, and that's and really letting people know the impacts of progressive zoos throughout the world, what they actually do and what the impact of them being closed and the impact of to conservation as a result. I just looked this morning, we're currently working on 66 projects right around the world in 21 countries, and we've got 40 odd dedicated teams out there. Normally at this time of year, we would have a number of our conservation partners, our conservation staff here at Chester out in those projects, and we can't do that at the moment because they can't travel, or it's too dangerous to travel or be in the countries that we'd want them to be in because of COVID. So that's having a real substantial impact. And one thing we're doing at Chester at the beginning of 2021 is launching a conservation master plan, which really sets out what our impact is going to be on conservation over the next 10, 15 years. So people can really clearly see through a set of matrix what we are doing as a zoo, where the money is going, how it's impacting on conservation, how we're preventing extinction as a charity. And that example of Western chimpanzees is just one. Some of the development plans that we've got here at Chester are all based around our conservation projects worldwide in 6 major areas of the world where we see biodiversity being threatened. And when we opened islands back in 2015, that was the first example, and our next project is around grasslands and then forest in the future, really linked to some of those projects. And we have this one plan, one approach to linking our conservation projects overseas to what we're actually physically doing here in the zoo.
Cool. And Martin, you've spoken about the mission of WAZA is really about increasing the conservation impact of the zoo community. So if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah. So yes, WAZA is here to work with its members and increase their conservation impact. And in a few words, what that means at this time is helping government to reach their species conservation goals. Is what Elaine was sharing is a good example of that. And actually in Australia, we have interesting cases to showcase that model. And what we would like to see that is seeing that happening everywhere. So to do that, we have an initiative called Reverse the Red, and it's about creating partnerships between zoos, the countries, and pushing a methodology that we call Assess, Plan, Act. You assess the situation in which a species is, what is the likely that this species might become extinct. Then you plan a conservation program with different stakeholders, government, local communities, zoos and aquarium, other NGOs. And then you implement this plan and you have this cycle where you continuously evaluate what the progress has been. And the result is decreasing this trend where we see that more and more species go extinct or the risk of becoming extinct increases. So that is how we're working on it. And for that, we have a partnership with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. That's the IUCN, which is the biggest conservation network in the world.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it's, I think some zoos get bad press, but there's fantastic, incredible work being done by a lot of really great zoos. And I think I've seen zoos described many times before as arcs for, conserving species, and that's really what they are and the work they're doing. I thought we'd touch a little bit on some of the initiatives that your own institutions are doing that are in improving the visitor experience, increasing secondary spend. So you may be surprised to know, you guys, that and you've been impressed to know that if you heard Chester Zoo had the best restaurant in Chester, you'd be impressed by that. But I can tell you, Chester Zoo has one of the best restaurants in the world. So Jamie, do tell us more about this.
Yeah, it's Oakfield House, which was the house that George Mottershead back in 1931 bought along with 9 acres of land, which now sits in the middle of 128 acres of the zoo. It's a Grade 2 listed property, beautiful house. When I first came to the zoo back in 2013, it was being used on and off for weddings and was looking a little bit tired. Hadn't had much money spent on it for a number of years, and we managed to persuade our trustees here at Chester to allow us to have some money to refurbish it. And we partnered with a guy who owns a very successful chain of independent pubs and restaurants here in the UK, and spent some money on it, built a garden room onto the side. There was always a conservatory, sort of like garden room on the side of the original building when George had it. It's full of history. George and his wife Elizabeth had lots of animals living in there, and there was apparently a couple of bears in there, chimpanzees, lion cubs, parrots, penguins, all sorts. There was an aquarium in the cellar, which we managed to reveal during the refurbishment. And we have made it into a gastropub. It seats around about 200 people. It's open every day to visitors. It's a pub as well as a restaurant. We've managed to poach a couple of really good chefs who love working at the zoo because they no longer have to work after 6 o'clock at night and can go home to their families. And we have opened it up, or before COVID, opened it up to weddings. We've opened it up to people to have great food, which is sourced locally and ethically and sustainably in and around Cheshire and England. And TripAdvisor voted it as one of the top 10 restaurants in the world earlier on this month. Which we're absolutely delighted about. The place has only been open and operating for 2 years, now, and it's also won a number of different awards more locally in the Northwest. It's a great place to eat. It's a great place for our members. We've got 123,000 members here at the zoo now who can come and go from the pub when they want. You can just book it really, really easily. And it's just a different dining experience. People coming to the zoo rather than being in big, large, sort of like canteen environments. It's a bit more special. We have lots of people coming for birthdays. We have people coming to the zoo now just because they want to come and eat, and they'll come and have a wander around the zoo afterwards. And it's a safe place for them to come and dine in rather than going into the city. So, really, really pleased with it. We've been able to expand into doing business breakfasts, into doing evening events, doing winter weddings here at the zoo. We've also refurbished all the rooms upstairs into meeting rooms for people to come, corporates to come. So really pleased with it. It looks fantastic as well. Sits in our botanical gardens here at the zoo. So really pleased with it, and absolutely delighted for the team that they got the award.
Very cool, very cool. And Elaine, I'm working on the assumption that you don't have a pub at your zoo, but can you tell us a little bit more about your commercial activities?
I don't know, I'm quite keen to come and visit the pub though. No, we don't have a pub, but we do have, as I guess a lot of zoos, we've got a range of commercial activities. So we do at Adelaide Zoo, which is a small city-based zoo. We run catering, and we've also got an events partner. So they've got a large conference facility that's upstairs. So yes, generally Friday, Saturday, Sundays are sold out for weddings and conferences, etc. That's been one of the big revenue impacts that we've lost, obviously, with the COVID impacts. And at Monarto Safari Park, Monarto Safari Park is about 70 kilometres out of Adelaide, and it's a really large site. It's about 1,500 hectares, and we've got a partnership with a private developer, so we will be building a large-scale safari resort, hotel, glamping, and introducing what will end up being the largest safari experience in the world outside of Africa. So we're really excited about that. COVID has slightly, got in the way of trying to do some of the planning, but our partner is absolutely committed. So that will be opening in 2022. We're right in the thick of the planning, and that will really allow us to do the early morning safaris, overnight experiences, and create something very, very special for Australia.
That's
so we might knock you off of TripAdvisor, Jamie, but that's all good.
Good stuff. I thought we'd end by just having a chat about some of the more sort of exciting animal displays you have at your zoo. So I thought, Elaine, if you could tell us, describe what Lions 360 is, because I understand that's been quite a success.
Yeah, so Lions 360 was one of our new areas that we opened at Monarto Safari Park, and it sort of reverses the concept of a zoo in that the animals are in the cage. So Monarto Safari Park is large, so our lion exhibit is about 11 hectares. So I think, get my maths right, it's about 25 acres of size for our lion pride. So we've built an experience where people catch bus, they go out to the lions, they walk under a tunnel, and then they come up inside the lion experience, and they're in the cage. So it's the people in the cage, and the lions can choose whether they want to come over and see them. They generally do, but it's always their choice. And the lions, so it's called Lions 360 because literally you are surrounded by lions. They will be up, they jump on the roof of the dome, and so you can have a lion sort of a very, very close distance to you, but quite safe. So we want to make people feel slightly terrified, but in a safe way. But they really do get to experience the awe and wonder of a lion up close. And it's been a fabulous experience. We opened it a couple of years ago. It's been really, really popular. And it's one of those ones that gives a great visitor experience, but it's also fabulous for animal welfare because the lions always get to choose whether they come or not. The keepers love it because they get to see the lions. You get to see, underneath a lion. But it's also helped us raise money for conservation. So a proportion of the revenue that we get from the experience goes to some of our conservation partners in Africa, starts helping lions in the wild. So people come, it's brought a whole new audience because there's people who book a ticket for that who wouldn't normally be zoo visitors. So it actually expands our reach into the community, raises awareness of the plight of lions. So it's been a really, really fun excitement. And it was one of those really ouch moments because we had 4 lion cubs born who were just starting to come out and come out of their den area with mum just before we closed with COVID. And they instantly jumped onto Lions 360 and the sight of watching a whole lion pride of, 3 big male lions, 4 females, and then 4 cubs. And there was no public. Now we're open, and with reduced numbers, we're able to operate Lions 360, and the public are loving watching those cubs.
Fantastic. And in terms of slightly less fierce animals, you've got the quokkas in the new children's zoo, which I understand can hide easily and get away from people if they want to.
Yeah, and I don't know if everyone from around the world knows what a quokka is, but if you don't, you should Google quokka. They're the world's cutest little Australian mammal. They always look like they're smiling, so they're a very, very cute animal. We've always had them in our children's zoo. We've recently opened a new children's zoo, and when we designed it, it was really thinking about both for the visitors, but also for the animals. And our quokkas, they're very popular, and so in the old children's zoo, people used to always get really up close with the quokkas, and the quokkas just had to live with that. Designing the new children's zoo, the quokkas have retreat areas, so if they want some quiet time away from some of our noisy visitors, the quokkas can choose to do that. And, that's part of our commitment to animal welfare. We had a very small proportion of our visitors say they preferred the old area because they could get so close to a quokka, pick it up, cuddle it. From an animal welfare point of view, we're much more comfortable with what we've got on offer, and we've made no bones about that's why we're doing it. And we just introduce new experiences and keep us talking about the quokkas, but it's in a much more controlled way. So again, aiming to be good for the visitors, but also really good for the animals.
Fantastic. And Martin, could you just, are there any particular new expansion projects or new areas opened at zoos you'd like to highlight that you think are really exciting? And any new zoo expansions, any new developments in zoos around the world that you've seen you think are worth highlighting? Oh, you're on.
No, not at this time. So we have a few members that are restructuring their operations. They are thinking how they will continue working in this new context. So I would say that a lot of rethinking is going on at the moment rather than moving forward with some projects. What I would like to mention though is that it is surprising how many zoos have found ways to keep supporting their conservation initiatives during this difficult time, which I think speaks highly of these institutions.
Absolutely. And Jamie, I thought in terms of Chester, quite remarkably, you've doubled attendance in the last 7 years there, from around 1 million to around 2 million, which is fantastic. And I know you've been expanding because the zoo has land and the Islands project, etc. Is there, personally, I've been there many times and I've been really pleased to see the Cape hunting dog exhibit there. And so is there anything particularly you'd like to highlight about your plans in coming years, COVID aside?
Yeah, COVID aside, which has probably pushed us back, probably a good 3 years, we have a strategic development plan which will now probably push us back to about 2035 to have it complete. But the next major phase is grasslands, which is really a reorganisation of the western side of the zoo. A large open savanna, mixed species paddock, Grevy zebra, Rothschild giraffe, roan antelope, ostrich in there, and then possibly a group of bachelor giraffes as well, a large vulture habitat, large restaurant that sits up on stilts that looks out over this savanna area. And then we've also got planning permission here at Chester for overnight accommodation. So 40 odd log cabins and luxury 5-star tents that look out over the giraffe paddock. That's really exciting for us. It really sets us in a different league to some other zoos in the UK and continues to make us progressive. It allows our visitors in the overnight stays to be able to come in, stay with us and be able to come in and out the zoo when they want, and also to be able to start some nocturnal tours of the zoo as well as early morning look rounds and more interaction and immersive experiences with our keepers. We were planning on starting that the back end of last year. Thank God we didn't. And we're now looking at possibly restarting that around 2022, 2023. We'll definitely do it in some sort of shape or form. We've got support to do it. We just need to make sure that we're back in a really fit and agile place with in a strong financial position, which we're working towards at the present time. And then it'll go on from there. So Forest will be our next major project, which we want to bring back Western Lowland Gorilla to Chester at the probably end of this decade, which will allow us to be able to, as I said earlier, be able to link through a one-plan approach the projects that we're working on overseas with what we're actually physically doing here at the zoo. People can see how the whole thing links. So lots of exciting plans, but probably in the meantime, we will do some smaller habitat development. So people will see things change at Chester. As well as being a conservation education charity, we're a large visitor attraction, and we need to keep changing, evolving if we're going to get people to keep coming here. 97% of our income comes through people coming through those gates and spending here at the zoo. And without those, we can't have the money to be able to put into conservation projects around the world. So we need to keep people coming here, as well as doing the great stuff that we do, both here in situ and overseas. So it's a real balance between being a conservation charity and a visitor attraction, which I think we do well. Hopefully, we'll be doing quite well here at Chester.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's. I think we've covered a lot of topics in this discussion. So I'd like to thank you all for coming along. I'd encourage all our attendees to, if you're in the area, visit Zoo South Australia or Chester Zoo, and absolutely look at WAZA.org online for more information about zoos and conservation worldwide. So. All that remains is to thank you all for coming along. And I should say each of our speakers will have their card on our platform, so feel free to send them questions, and I'm sure they'll get back to you on there. So thanks again, and we shall speak soon. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, from down under.